Hello, everybody. How are you? It's good to see you. I am Jack Wallace, and
I am Cindy Morrison. This is the Get Real with Jack and Cindy podcast.
We're so glad you're here. So today we're going to go over a somewhat controversial subject that
I feel like I want to do this. Okay, Jack, tell me more.
Yeah. Okay. So I told Cindy before we start this, we just have no idea what's going to come out of my mouth on this because I have such mixed feelings about it. But the reality is this is the way it's going to be. This is where we're heading as far as we know.
Okay, so we're talking about the lawsuit and settlement with the National Association of Realtors and what this means for you as a buyer.
In also particular with the buyer broker service agreement, because that is the one thing from the buyer standpoint that is going to come up as the that you as a buyer or as an agent representing a buyer, we are going to be required. Most companies are requiring it now to get kind of ahead of it, but it's going to be a National Association of Realtors.
Realtor.
I swear I can't. One of those NAR. It's going to be a requirement. They said July, now they're saying August, but it's going to be the case. The problem is,
let's back up for a second. And some agents have done this. You and I have talked about. We didn't do this.
No.
It just wasn't okay. So when you are a buyer and you meet with an agent, it has not been a requirement. But a lot of agents would make you sign a contract basically that says, hey, you're my agent. We're in this together for 6 months. A lot of agents did that to protect themselves. I didn't want I explained that we work on commission. I didn't want to trap somebody if we were not a good fit to make them feel like they had to use me.
Right. Yeah. I mean, there's two schools of thought in Omega, and not to say that one is better than the other.
For sure.
I'm the same. I've not used them. And I've probably had times whenever it would have been really great to have had them because people,
meet with the builder and suddenly,
I mean, but
you're cut out.
But in the same respect, I never wanted to push that. I was willing to let that go because I didn't feel. It felt a little bit to me like I was entrapping people into, and I don't think I'm not saying that it is an entrapment, but I am going to say this. I think that's what we need to really discuss because I think that the public can feel that way. And I think that there are some people in the business that could use it that way. And I think we're going to have an issue. I think the thing that we're going to have an issue with is I think that a lot of the public will go out and just be signing things. It's kind of like when you get your car. When I go to get my car serviced now, and they make
sign on the dotted line,
and it's like initial sign, and you're not reading anything, you're just doing, and it's like I always think, what have I really just agreed to? I mean, I'm handing the keys over to my car, and but it's like but you just do it, and so I think that the public is so used to that that I'm afraid what they're going to start doing is signing these buyer broker service agreements, thinking that they're nothing, and they are a legally binding document that they are signing. So I think it's important that we go through that. But I think in the same respect, we have to be very careful right now because
things could change.
And they are going to change. And the Oklahoma form is being changed as we speak, supposedly. Because the verbiage was very confusing in areas. And so they're trying to make it a little more clear. So
before this buyer broker agreement was optional. Starting August 17th of 2024, it will be mandatory. And one of the key things that I think people need to know is in this document is you are going to have a choice. Are you going to pay this agent a flat fee? Are you going to pay them a commission? Is the agent willing to accept whatever the seller is offering, which means could be zero commission? There are different options that will make a big deal to a buyer, especially if you're barely inking by with the interest rates and rate of inflation, barely inking by to get that mortgage and come up with the down payment and come up with your closing costs. Now here's another thing on top of it that you might have to pay.
Right. And then also for those of us that are in the business that are out spending our time, our money, our energy, and this is how we feed our families and ourselves, we're signing something that says we're not going to just do this for free, because this is, this is our job. This is our profession. No one has to work for free.
No one should work for free. That's called volunteer work.
Free. Yeah. So it's a very interesting document that everybody's going to have to get their brain around. And like I said,
awkward.
It's
to
awkward.
Have that conversation is extreme, especially for those of us who've not used the buyer broker agreement in the past. Very awkward. Hi, nice to meet you. Excuse me, would you sign this and tell me if you're going to pay me or not?
And my hope for the future is this is the way it is, and we have to accept that, change is the way we have to accept it. And my hope is that it will not be so awkward in the future, because it will become so standardized. Yes. And it'll just be an understanding. And you know what? I have problems with the way this is all going, because I feel like we're putting onto the buyers some things that really have never been put on the buyer, and suddenly they're supposed to just accept this, and here we go. And we're supposed to we're protecting the buyer somehow, but it doesn't necessarily feel like that's what's happening. So I will say, let's back up. Let's talk a little bit about how we got here a little bit, and what's happening now, because so we got to talk about the MLS, the multiple listing service, and what that is. Let's say what that is. It's the multiple listing service, which means that it is a format. It is a platform where, for example, I have a listing. I put the listing on MLS, and I say, hey, anyone who is in this MLS has the right to sell this property as the buying agent. And when you do, you are going to be compensated this amount of money, which the government told us we needed to do.
In the 1980s, they said you have to write down what this commission is. Everybody needs to be clear what that commission is,
so that we are all clear. Because before that, we all just kind of agreed to things, and it was actually 7%, not 6% most of the time. So it was, and I've been in it since that, when we had a book, and it was like in the book, it was just a different thing.
So you literally had your book of all of
you got a new one every 2 weeks,
like a 𝐁𝐻 𝐑 listings. And then would you get what other people have?
Oh yeah, it was still multiple lists, and you would get it it would deliver to the offices, and it would be it was kind of the multi-list, but it was in paper, and it was like literally you put it in your notebook. And
something printed?
Yeah,
Wait,
and
what?
it had a manual little key thing that went like this. It's really the truth. Yeah, that's what I was. So anyways, so that all became a little too back room to them. Mm-hmm. And so
Agreed.
They changed it to that. So that's how we've been for a long time. So, and as a buying agent, you can look and say, okay, that's how much they're paying me, and then it's kind of like a written agreement publicly that's what they're agreeing to. Well, the government and the settlement is saying, no, that is not right to have it on MLS, because it's not transparent, which I still don't understand, but that's there. So for the sake of the public, they're wanting to take that off, and it cannot be mimicked or recreated. You can't recreate a different type of MLS. Well, the problem I have, and this is where I think it really comes down to, is that we are the ones who pay a lot of money. As realtors, we pay a lot of money to support that and to build it and to keep it going.
We pay for the MLS a lot of money every year as an agent.
Yes.
To support that system.
And quarterly, and we provide the photos, the descriptions, we implement all of that. So that is all. The MLS is not some free governmental thing that we take advantage of.
Or a third party something or another.
And there's different MLSs for different markets. And so some people belong to 2 or 3 because their market. And so they're paying a lot of money to a lot of different ones. So what's happened is over the years, that's been used against us. And so now that all goes out. And so, for example, let's say Zillow.
let me pull something out of thin air.
So Zillow takes that information, and then they give it back to the public.
And they basically scrape all that information.
All that information
off
is
of
from
MLS.
Us. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Maybe they add a few public record things in, but it's mostly from the MLSs
that we paid for.
And then they sell time for other agents, where the other agents can say, I want to buy this zip code. And then whenever you go and you click on a listing, it doesn't take you to the lister. It takes you to one of their agents who has paid for that privilege. A lot of firms will then take that, and when they get that call, it goes into whoever's on floor duty or whatever, or that particular agent if they paid for it, and they take that lead, and then they take the client and go. Well, now,
which you may have never met, that you probably most likely have not met this agent. You don't know anything about them. You don't even know if you can work well together.
And nothing against those agents.
No, absolutely not.
It's worked for them, and they're
It's
doing
marketing for them.
But in the same respect, as a listing person, when I show up at my listing to show it to somebody, and I realized that the public was trying to reach me, they ended up with this person, and they're actually angry because they wanted to deal with the listing person, and they suddenly realized that they've been sort of made to believe they were and they aren't. Then that is that situation. Well, in the past, on that particular house, that agent would have threshold rights who brought the client. So you were kind of in a
like carrying your bride over the threshold.
Right.
So they brought their clients in.
Yeah. So you were kind of locked in on that house because of that. But now Zillow has you sign a buyer broker or some kind of agreement, and they're saying that it locks you in for 7 days. So now you do that and you think innocently, I'm going to go look at this house. I'm doing this, and I've signed the thing.
I'm thinking I'm going and meeting the listing agent, but I'm not. I'm meeting.
And so you get there, and suddenly you're like, who is this person that I didn't really want?
Sign this.
And maybe, maybe they're a perfect match for you, or maybe they're a horrible match for you, but you now have 7 days where you are basically stuck using that person.
Mm-hmm.
And so
which could be wonderful or it could be a nightmare.
Yeah. And so that's somewhat under review by the DOJ is what I've heard. But that's what we're getting into. I think all of this is great in some ways, because I think honestly, as a realtor, I'm getting somebody under contract that I didn't because to me, it didn't feel right. But now if it is required, then I have no choice. I have to do it. So the positive from my professional standpoint is I will have some people that will be committed to me for a certain amount of time, and I will do my best to work for them and with them. But as the public, if you're going and you're signing all these things, then how many people have you committed to? Are you going to be, it's a mess. It could be a real mess, and it could put the public, I'm afraid, in a vulnerable position. So I think you just need to be very aware that you're going to need to sign it, but you need to really read it.
Before you ever walk through the front door.
Unless it's an open house. Open houses you can go to without signing anything. So I think a lot of people are going to start going to open houses more. Yeah. But that's the one kind of caveat that we can, stray from. So anytime if I have someone call and want to see a house, if I don't have a buyer broker with them, before I can take them through the house, they have to sign that. So whatever you're signing, be comfortable with. Mm-hmm. That's all I'm saying. And read it. Read the timeline. Mm-hmm. How far am I committing out in the future? Read the compensation situation and what you're agreeing to. Now, the one thing that you have to be aware of is we, again, don't want to work for free, because that's not what we signed up to do. And I have to pay bills, and, I just don't want to work for free.
And our errors and omissions insurance won't cover us if we work for free.
Right. So there are going to be ways that we're going to talk in those documents about compensation, and some of them are going to be basically if then next in how they're done. If the listing side is agreeing to pay enough compensation, we'll accept that. Anything that they don't pay within that percentage or within that value that I feel like I need, then the buyer will make up for it. Or then there's also that it's just a set number that I will not work, that I will have to get in order to work for this commission. Otherwise, I won't do it. So if somebody's offering 0% and the buyer is unwilling to pay anything, I'm not going to work that and do that for free. So it's trying to really covering two people, and I think there's a way to work that in the right way. I just think each party, professional realtor, terrible.
And it is a copyrighted term, because I did the TV show.
I didn't copyright it, so I'm not good.
because I did the TV show from the National Association of Realtors, I had to retake every time I didn't say it right.
Yeah, and I'm from Oklahoma, so
Realtor.
Here we are. No, so I think that's where we have to really look at. So it's like we've got a document that we're going to have to do. It's going to be trying to cover both parties, but as the public, I think you have to really, really read it and know what you're dealing with, and preferably if you can get it sent to you before you show up at the door.
Yes,
that would be great. There's dot loop. There's all different ways. DocuSign where you can do that. I think that's very important that you sign what you and agree to what you're going to agree to and know what you're signing. This is not just an initial and sign here kind of deal.
It could cost you 3% or 2%,
or lock you into something that you don't want it to lock you into. As the other side, from a professional standpoint, I think we owe a great duty to the public to really explain it, which is what this is supposed to be doing, is give real credence to this is what I'm going to make and how I'm going to make it. And so we have to really just spell it out the best and most clearly precise way that we can to the public. But at the same time, we have to make sure that it covers us where we're not accepting compensation that is not equivalent to what we deserve. I mean, that's and you have to decide what that is. Yeah,
it will be interesting. So there's a box that you can check that says I will accept whatever the seller is offering, which could be zero. But I want to talk to sellers for a minute. When you put your house on the market, you are not making a dime until you have a buyer that wants to pay for your house. So you have a house for sale. It will stay for sale until you have a buyer that comes and gives you money for that house. If with an agent who's representing that buyer, if you are not offering compensation to that buyer, it may sound great. Oh, I'm going to save 3 or 4%, or whatever it is. All of that has always been negotiable, how much we make, how much the commission is. But you are offering out whatever percent, let's say 3%, for a buying agent to come show your house. You are agreeing to pay them that 3%. Actually, I think they're agreeing to pay the listing brokerage, and then the listing brokerage is splitting it or whatever they've decided, giving so much to the people who bring in the buyers. I may be going too far in the weeds here, so tell me if I am. But if you do not offer any compensation, and I get that it's no longer going to be listed on MLS starting at least August 17th, if not before, you are not going to have agents who want to come show your house. So you have now limited your buyers. And again, you're not getting paid until somebody actually gives you a contract and pays you. So you are agreeing, hey, I am willing to give up part of that in order to make sure the most possible number of people come and see my house. Because I went on a listing appointment the other day, and my client said, I'm only going to pay 3% and it all goes to you. I'm like, okay, that's not going to go over well, which it did not. I finally, because she had to agree that I would take 2 and we would at least give 1. And it caused all kinds of problems of agents calling me and saying, are you taking 5 and only giving 1?
Because some people are.
Yeah, some people are doing that, which is so wrong. I feel like everybody's commission should be listed on MLS, the listing agent and because I'm going to be angry if you've already negotiated my salary or my commission before I ever even brought you a client.
Right.
So I always split it. But anyway, it caused all kinds of problems. And I'm like, this is what the seller wants to do. This is my client. I have to do what they want to do. We ended up leasing the house.
Yeah. Well,
nobody wanted to show it.
I think a couple of things are really important in this right now. And that is, I've always used the analogy when I'm talking to my seller before all this, if you're going to offer, if I'm listing in a neighborhood and the majority of realtors are offering out 3 before this podcast ends in the future, I'm going to get it right. No, if they're offering out 3% as the normal commission to the buyer's agent, and you want to offer 2, you have the right to do that. We can do that if that's what you want to do. But here is what I want to say about that. If I went to work every day, if you went to work every day and there was one door that said $2,000, and there was one door that said $3,000, you do the same amount of work. It's an exact same office. But if you walk through the $2,000 door, you're going to make $2,000 for that day. And if you walk through the $3,000 door, you're going to make $3,000. Which door would you choose? Which would you choose? Doing the same exact thing.
2,000 said no one ever.
Yeah, because so as an agent who's showing properties, then I'm going to direct, I'm going to move, I'm going to, that's going to be more what drives me in that respect. And so I think it's just a basic, it's a basic business principle because it's a compensation-based business. It's not like it's something terrible. It's just the way that business works. Now, if we're in the place where we think commissions have gotten too high and we want to bring them back, the market will bring them back, and that's okay. I mean, if normal compensation goes from 3 to 2, and the majority of the people in the neighborhood are offering 2 in that compensation, then that number is going to come to 2. And so I can see where we're sort of moving in some directions because of that. And I think we're all okay with some changes and understanding of that.
Sure.
But the thing that's ridiculous to me is that we've had this in the past where there were people that would pay a lump sum, just a small amount to get on MLS that we pay for, we provide, and then they would offer 0 compensation or $1 compensation. And at that time, we were by law required to show the property and accept the compensation. And it was a loophole that was very difficult. Now, a lot of those houses never sold. A lot of them, things went wrong.
But the owner is being so smart by offering $1.
And their thinking was, as a seller, well, I just want to use the MLS, but I don't want to pay you or anybody. I mean, some angry people, but they had no problem using the system that we pay for, that we start. There'd be no MLS without us, but you are the evil money grabbers, so I'm going to mess you up and not pay. Well, actually, this settlement that is supposed to, it actually kind of makes it where you get to say, I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
Because now it's a negotiation between, it is literally, they have said, we as the buyer's agents must negotiate with the seller. And so if the seller's only offering $1 or $0, I'm not going to take it. And I can do that now. And so it's actually making it better in some ways for the buyer's agent in that respect, with the abuse of the MLS in that respect. It's just making it so unclear how we know how to communicate with each other. That's what it's really that we're not trying to do anything that is not in the best interest of the public. We just don't understand why this is now suddenly supposed to be better, and it doesn't feel better.
Well, and so the DOJ, this is my understanding is correct, felt like when the commissions were in MLS, so you've got one property that they're giving 2% to the buying agent, one property that they're giving 3%. They felt like agents were steering their clients, which is illegal to do, to the 3% so they could make more money.
Mm-hmm.
They thought people were steering before. Now it's going to be like, well, I can't show you that property because they're not paying me anything.
Yeah. Well, my problem on that too is that I think that is the free market system. I mean, if somebody's offering a bonus, a selling bonus, I mean, that is the way that business works. You don't have to buy that house. And now, as I can understand, I mean, I've never been motivated by that, but I mean, is that something that, if somebody's offering me a ridiculous amount of money that doesn't really cover my expenditures and my time, and then somebody's offering me actual compensation, I think there's a tendency to go, I deserve the actual compensation. So I think that's a shading issue, but I also think it's ridiculous because they don't do that with other businesses.
Nope.
Like
nobody's
it's a free enterprise capitalistic system.
Nobody's telling my husband at Lexus of Tulsa, you can only market your cars this much yet.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's where you get into a real weird zone, and, I don't want to get political, and I'm very in the middle on everything, but this is really, there's a feeling that there's a trying to change a system because they want to show malice so they can look good, but it's really hurting the people they're trying to help. And it's certainly hurting so many of the people that I know that work so hard and are so honorable, and they're really just trying to make a living to support their family in a way that they can't in
I'm
other
still
ways.
paying off college.
Yeah, I mean, so it's like
Not my college, my kids' college.
Why it's become such a demonizing, and the average compensation or the average income for a realtor is very low. I mean, so I honestly, there's definitely some reform that can happen, and good.
Of course.
And I think there's a lot of things that we get frustrated, like we were just talking about how you don't really know whether somebody is holding a whole lot of the commission and then not only giving us, like, some of that. We would love to see that more transparent.
And agents do that. Like, I think both of those commissions should be there.
Yeah.
So, okay. So for somebody, and we're going to talk this out while,
like I said, I didn't know how this was going to go.
Coming along for the ride. Yeah. Okay. So let's say I have a buyer, Susie.
Mm-hmm.
Susie wants to buy this house where they're offering 0 commission.
Okay. Which she has a right to buy.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So do I have to say, I'm sorry, Susie, the most important purchase and the most expensive purchase you're ever going to make in your life. Good luck with that. See you, bye.
That if that's what she wants to do.
But can we give a contract that says we're going to pay X, but also in the provisions, we're going to have you pay closing costs and 3% commission to my agent?
Yes, we can do that.
Okay.
Yeah, you can do that. You can put it in the contract. Now, if somebody is the seller and they are just determined not to pay that, here's where we get into a weird zone. If they were to just cross that out and initial it, and then your client signs it and you have your name on there, then are you suddenly, do you
out
have
of luck?
Well, and here's the thing. It puts us in a strange position because we are party to the contract, but not a party to the contract, right?
Right.
So we don't have any control over what's in the contract agreement, but yet we are committing, I think, on a certain level. So I think that the one thing you could get on that would be blurry about that is if they cross out the paying the commission, that also could be stated that they're not willing to let the buy side participate as an agent. You know what I'm saying? So I think that's the way I would go on that. So I think it's still better to put it in there, but I think we just have to be aware of that's a blurry line, on that. And that's what we're saying. It's just like, just tell us what we're doing and we'll do it. I mean, that's where I am right now. Just tell us what the rules are and we'll do it.
And houses are more expensive.
And put that in the contract. I think that could even be provided in the contract. And then even if it's an MLS already that they've agreed, or not an MLS, but they've already agreed to do 3%, then we just know that's a 3% on that line item.
And I think social media is going to become very valuable to agents because I'm able to put my builder is paying agents 3%, or here's this house. And oh, by the way, my agent friends, they're paying 2% or 3% or whatever to the buyer's agent. That's how we're going to communicate a lot of that, either through a phone call or social media.
My worry, honestly, is that we could see the MLS just really start becoming nothingness.
I don't want to go back to printed in a key.
I don't want to go back to printed in a key. I think we could end up going more to like individual websites for bigger companies. I mean, I think, I think a lot of this is going to really take a lot of the mom and pop shops out. I think that's going to be, we're already seeing that with errors and omission insurance, that a lot of the smaller companies can't afford to stay in business and provide that. There's certain companies that you can sign up. They're kind of big companies that you have to understand that if it's over 500,000, that you have to have your client sign that they are not covered for errors and omissions. So I mean, but there's just different things that we have because it's just the way it is. It's kind of like the doctors with malpractice in a way. They're just bigger conglomerate, clinics than there used to be. So I think I could see it where we get to where it's more like we have a website. You can go look at houses on our website, or so and so has, but it's like, and then not allow that to be, what does they call it when you index it out to other? Oh my gosh, brain
referral.
Freeze.
What?
Well, like whenever you syndicate it, you can't be we say it's our website. You're not allowed to syndicate our listings, and so then you could really get to a place where there could just be where and that's where it is in New York City. Like it's an interesting thing because they don't have the MLS and they're not a part of NAR. So it's not like it isn't done anywhere.
Right.
You can do that. So it scares me a little bit because I think it works so well the way it is. But then again, the way that I can see a lot of companies saying, you know what, if we're going to get in trouble for it, let's just not do it. Well, then all of the real estate love that everybody has going through and looking and all voyeuristically, it's going to be kind of gone. I mean, I just don't think the public understands what this is. Could be a huge shift for them and their availability to find property.
And all this came from a lawsuit of sellers saying, we want to be compensated because we don't think we should have paid the buyer's agent. Do you know?
And they got
how
$8.
much they got? $8
over 3 years.
$8. These people who were in this class.
The lawyers
lawsuit
have just walked away. They've taken their money and run. And
Yeah.
now the DOJ is saying, well, we don't think it maybe went far enough. So I mean, we're all in flux a little bit. And that's why, and like I said, we don't even know what the form exactly is going to end up being when it's required.
A lot of agents and brokerages are not talking about this because until it goes into effect.
Yeah, which is fair.
And totally get that. But if we're going to get real, I think it's very important that we talk about this as it continues to unfold. So people, I mean, we were one of the first on our podcast to talk about this when the settlement happened.
I think you also, as the public and as other realtors, need to hear that we're all confused by this. This is, sort of like our government at work, and our, this is kind of where we are, and that we as it almost feels like, in a way, as labor, we have to stand up and say a few things about where we are. It's like, why do you get to come in and tell us so much about our compensation and when we're really not doing what there's no evidence that we're doing what you're talking about. I mean, I think it's insulting because it feels like we're being told that we've just been so evil and so wrong. And I've been doing this a long time, and I don't see it. I just do not see it. I think that we have done a great job. And I think that there are things
we care about our clients.
Absolutely. And I think there are things that could be better, and we should strive to make them better. And I'm open to whatever. But I mean, this feels like in so many ways we are going backward. And I think we have to accept that this is where we are. But I do think when it comes to this, when it comes to the buyer broker service agreement, it probably is for the better.
It's just awkward.
Awkward. But we are going to all figure that out together. But as the public, I just want to emphasize to the public, you must really pay attention to what you're signing. That's just make sure you're very comfortable with what you're signing, and that the main things you want to really focus on are the timeline you're agreeing to be under, contract with this person, and the amount of compensation that you would be ultimately responsible for if the seller isn't paying compensation. Those are the two things you need to really be very conscious of when you're signing and agreeing to it. As the agent, you need to be very, very clear on those two things. Very clear. And, it's almost like, I think at times we feel so apologetic that we're having to do it, that we can make it like it's no big deal and, just sign here. It's like, I don't want to even talk about it. But if we're going to have them sign something, we owe due diligence to say, this is what you are signing. 100%. And saying, well, sign this, but the reality is it probably isn't going to happen this way. Well, they're agreeing to it. So I don't think that flies. So, you got to have some statement that maybe helps you relieve them that truly isn't going to happen. And
it may be weird for a period of time. I've heard some people I very much respect in this industry saying, as more houses go on the market and there's more competition for sellers, we probably will return to kind of what we've always been doing. Because if you're competing with the house down the street, like you said, and they're offering 3% and you're offering 0%, more people are going to go look at that 3% house, most likely with their agents, than they are yours. That competition may level this playing field.
And you know what? The sad thing to me too is that they're doing this in a time when the market is struggling a little bit, and it's the interest rates are high. It's like, yet it feels like terrible timing to me. But I think the one thing as our profession, as far as our profession goes, it's happening in a time when people realize they still need us. They need us to be selling their houses. So I think in that respect, this is for for our business, this is probably not the worst time for this to be happening, because the public is like, wait, I don't want it to become a system where no one gets any compensation for selling my house and no one wants to sell my house.
Yeah.
So I think I do think we're probably going to see some shifts in how business is done. I think we're going to see some shifts in how many more full-time agents there are compared to part-time. I mean, I think it's going to, maybe you're going to have to sink your teeth in a little bit more for it to be a business for you that you're really doing instead of a sideline for you.
Because we pay a lot for the privilege to be an agent, between paying for MLS, paying our National Association of Realtor dues, the GTAR, Greater Tulsa Association of Realtors, like all the fees and our office fees or whatever. We pay a lot to do what we love. When we say that,
we're not joking. Like, I think sometimes people go, oh yeah. I honestly, it's amazing how much we are required to pay. And then even with NAR, we pay a yearly fee, a big yearly fee, to the point they have enough money to settle a lot of the things and that's just come out of our pocket. So it's like everyone says, well, only the big companies are paying or whatever. Well, it may end up being that NAR pays it, and that money is all from us. We paid it. So it's an interesting time for all of us. But I think the most important thing right now is we have to live in what is real and what is required. What is real and what is supposedly going to be required is, first off, this buyer broker agreement. They are also, in the same time that they do this, they're taking a compensation off of MLS. And at that point, we will figure out how we communicate to other agents, how we are getting paid and what that percentage is, but we will figure that out. For the public, I don't think they're going to see a big change when it comes to that.
Until they have to pay 3% as a buyer.
Yeah, but what's going to be evident,
or 2% or whatever.
What's going to be evident to the public immediately is this, and I think it's going to be an awkward transition for them, and I think, and understandably so. I mean, I think we're keyed into this like nobody. I mean, they
laser focused,
and most people now have even forgotten about the settlement. Like, that was news cycle.
My favorite news story that I just can't believe, and I can say this because I came from the media. How this is going to lower housing prices because you no longer have to pay the buyer's agent.
That is what the government thinks they're doing. It's
BS.
100%.
Any seller, and when I take them the comps for their neighborhood, competitive analysis, and say, here's what houses are selling for in this neighborhood, said no seller ever, oh, okay, then I'll do this minus 3%.
Here's the problem.
No one ever said that.
So here is the problem. And I don't really hear a lot of people saying this, but I'm going to say it. Here is the problem. The problem is they're focusing on they're putting the wrong emphasis on the wrong syllable. Because
I dare you to say that again. That was awesome.
Putting the wrong emphasis on the wrong syllable. So the problem is they're trying to bring the prices down and not really addressing the cost of lending. What's causing our market to be slow is the cost of lending. So all of this sounds great. A percentage here, a percentage there, and it's going to shut it off, and it's going to be, oh, how great. The truth is, like you said, is that that the prices are going to keep going up.
Yep.
As long as this goes the way it's going. And that if they don't really get a handle, and we don't get a handle on the price of lending. Now, I'm not saying it has to come down to where it was.
Right.
They got to find the sweet spot to where it makes it appealing enough for people to jump off their bubble and use their equity, or for buyers to actually afford a home that they would want. We've been not in that zone very much, and so now we're starting to float down a little bit. But what they're trying to do is they're trying to do some kind of legislation that makes the evil real estate people who have done this get into this, where it's going to bring the price down. But that is not really the problem.
No, it's not.
I mean, the problem is that people are sitting on a healthy 3 to 3.5% mortgage, including myself, that it's not a lot of reason to jump off of and put your house in. So then the inventory is staying low because people aren't letting go of their house. And then the price to finance, a lot of people who live in the house they live in now could not buy the house they live in now. They
Correct.
could not afford it. And so they have, even if they decide, you know what, I'm going to sell this, I'm going to get something new, they'd go down in house instead of go up. So as long as we're in that zone, which we're going to be there for a little while. I mean, we are, because no matter what anybody does, it's going to take time for that to shake out. But what we're trying to do right now is sort of ridiculous, because if you take a few percentage off the price of the house, even if you did take a few percentage off the price of the house, the monthly is minimally affected. The monthly payment is minimally affected. I can't say the other thing, but I can't say minimally. But it's really, truly minimally changed, right? So it doesn't really matter. We all basically are renting. I mean, if you're when you have a lease, I mean when you have a mortgage, you're pretty much renting to own it. I mean, that's kind of the way it works. And so that monthly is what people really care the most about. Then you have the inflation of increases in the cost of insurance. You have the increase in, so they've already upping their monthly number is going up. Taxes have gone up. So that number has gone up. So a couple of points off the price isn't going to help. It's just not. Now the program, they're talking about a $10,000 credit for people that are buying a house or people that are selling, which that's being floated around. There's some of that I like, because you could use that to buy down points. You could buy that
absolutely
to do certain escrows. I mean, there's some good things about that, but this other is like, it doesn't make any sense.
Well, in during COVID, tell me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
Because I very well could be.
I will.
The things that kept our economy afloat during COVID were house and car sales.
Amen. And who worked nonstop during that
Who sells
period?
houses and cars? The Morrison family.
Oh my gosh. I mean, seriously, how hard did we all work during that period? And like, you know, everyone was like, I'm having so much fun. I'm doing that. I'm like, I'm not. I'm worried about
what planet do you live on?
I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful for that. I am. And but no, yeah, exactly. But and that's also why I mean, I will say, realtor. I will say, we also did have some really great years, and everybody should have some time where they are going. You know, they got to survive this a little bit while we're going through this transition, because it was kind of the sugar rush, and now we've got we've got to deal with what we're dealing with, and so hopefully everybody saved their nuts for winter, because when times were good. So it's and if not, people may have to go do other things for a while, and
and we are probably going to lose a lot of agents through this, and that makes me sad.
Yeah, I hate in a way, because I think there's a lot of really good people trying to get started in it that are having a difficult time. And if you're one of those people, keep doing what you're doing. I've worked in a lot of markets, and good work, hard work, perseverance, and showing up will pay off. It will pay off.
And marketing.
And there's always people always have to sell and buy a house. They just do. You're going to have divorce. You're going to have death. You're going to have marriage. You're going to have babies born. You're going to have good and bad things that facilitate the need for changing of a house. And so it's just a little different in how that goes.
Right.
Unfortunately, in 2008 and 2009, what happened was we had all these houses that people could no longer afford. We're the opposite. We had people couldn't afford to be in their house, and so they were just dumping their house. So we had an overabundance of inventory and a lack of demand.
Right.
Now we have a large demand, but we have a very low inventory. And even the demand, I don't know how strong it is in a lot of markets because of what we talked about earlier.
2008, 2009, though, we lost half the agents here in Tulsa.
Right.
Like half of them left the industry. It's like we talked about, it is expensive to be a real estate agent. And if you're doing it part-time, very few people can afford to do that.
Yeah. And again, for newer agents, getting that buyer broker agreement now, like it's an interesting thing. It's kind of a double-edged sword, right? Because for a newer agent who has to get somebody to sign that to look at a house, well, you're also getting someone to agree to use you.
Yep.
We're used to it. It's kind of like, well, I showed the house and then I never hear from them, and they've gone on and done something. So it's kind of an interesting thing. And the other thing too is, as a person who, like, a lot of times you'll have somebody, they'll call the listing agent to show the house. Well, now if you call the listing agent, you're going to have to sign something with them. Well, if you're already signed with somebody else, can I, as the listing agent, even show them my house?
Oh yeah, probably.
Because I don't have a buyer broker with them, that they have with somebody else. So I may have to say, I'm sorry, I can't.
Are you going to have to say, okay, did you call Zillow or Realtor.com or whatever, sign something with somebody for 7 days? So I can't show it to you for another 5 days until your 7 days is up.
And that I don't know the answer to, because then are we liable if we show it when we didn't? I mean, there's some tricky parts to that we're going to have to figure out then. And I think we're all going to figure it out. But again,
and we will figure it out. But there's just so many. I just don't see how this is positive for the public, that buyers may have to pay the commission, but sellers were paying the commission to get buyers agents to come show their property, because they make no money until their house sells.
But I think what we were thinking was, well, everyone's just going to start going to the listing agent, and they'll just go listing agent listing. Now, this kind of is different, because that theory doesn't really hold up.
Because now you're in an agreement with that.
Unless I'm saying this buyer broker is only for right this minute, this house, which that we could do, which is probably what I'll do. If somebody wants to go look at a house that's just that house, and I know that that's because I'm the listing agent, that's probably how I would handle that. But I don't think that's what most people are going to do. So I think you're going to get into some real interesting,
And let's say you're showing 3 houses. Could you sign a buyer broker agreement for each of those 3 houses, depending on what they're offering for compensation? I
think that's a question that people are saying, but I think that the thought is that this is supposed to be something that you do before you ever show them a house that covers everything. But I have a real issue with that.
Yeah.
Because I think, again, it's like, why am I going to ask? It's like I have to ask the buyer to agree to a larger amount in order to cover me being compensated by somebody else for a larger amount.
And so let's say the buyer says, okay, I'm going to pay you 2%. Then you end up going to see a house where the seller is offering 3%. You cannot accept that 3%. You can only do the 2% that you already agreed to.
You can't take more than what is on the Are there balloons going up?
Why do we have balloons? Sorry, we just looked up and both of us were like, the
screen had
balloons. I don't know what that means.
No, why? What were we talking about?
The 2% versus 3%.
Oh yeah. So the way
we're back
again. The way it's written now, we don't know if this is the way it will end up being written, but it says that you can only get compensation as high as the number that you've agreed to, not over on that agreement. And so then you can take less, but you can't.
I will take
more.
10%, please.
So that's what I'm saying. So the realtor may really cover themselves and say 4% in order, but I think where the caveat's going to be, or where we're going to save ourselves, is there will be some kind of verbiage that in special conditions or that says that the buyer is only responsible up to a certain thing, or the buyer is not responsible for any compensation other than what is being provided by the seller, but that the seller has to provide up to a certain percentage. So yeah, it's crazy. And again, we're doing this a little bit prematurely because we don't know exactly what the form is going to say, but we do know this is going to be and we as a public, you need to start getting in the idea of doing that. And as realtor professionals, we need to get into the mindset of this is required. It's going to have to happen. And so, for those of us who have not done that in the past, I've got to rewrap my brain around it and reframe it because it is. Yeah. And I think in the long run, I do think it will make it a good thing and it'll be a workable thing. But I think there's a lot to cover. I think it's a lot to cover on both sides. And I just think for both sides to have a fair situation, it's a lot to think about.
And just remember, you wouldn't defend yourself in court. You wouldn't do your own surgery. You really do need somebody on your side when you're buying and selling probably the most expensive thing you are going to own in your life. More expensive than your car. Maybe you buy and sell businesses, so there might be something more expensive that you're buying. But this is a huge purchase with a lot of legalities tied to it. Yeah. So just make sure you have a real estate agent that knows what they're doing to protect you.
And here's a really good thing. So this is where it's really good for the public. Because when you walk into that one furniture store where they accost you at the front and ask you if you have a salesperson, and you always think, God, I wish I had a salesperson.
I just always say, oh, I'm already working with someone.
Well, anyways, so now it's going to be like that. You can walk in and someone goes, do you have a salesman? You go, yes, I do. I signed with Jack. Yes, I do. I signed with Cindy.
And
so now you're going to have a badge of courage that you can go around going, stay back, I'm good. So I think in that respect, as the public, that's going to be a good thing for you. I think as professionals, we need to let you know that is what you get to do with that now.
Or the opposite, you walk into that particular furniture store and you have 10 people shoving a piece of paper in your face. Sign with me.
So that's where when you sign it, know what you're signing and for what time period and for what compensation. Because if you sign it knowing, I want this agent, I want this agent, I'm great with them, that's who I want, and you sign that, you're signing yourself into, I have now committed myself and you can't reach me.
We are now married.
Yeah, and you can't reach me. Because I think that's where a lot of the public is. I think that's exactly where we're going to have to make sure we take it and put it in a positive way, that yes, you are making a commitment, but that also commits you to not having to deal with being taken advantage of by other people.
Yes, correct.
So,
all right. Well, we know we will be talking about this quite a bit more. Again, all of this goes into effect August 17th, 2024. And it will be interesting a year from now, what the actual situation, once we have almost a year under our belts of this.
And listen,
new world.
I am in real estate. That is what I do.
Yeah, me
so
too.
We're going to figure it out, and we're going to do what we have to do to get it done. And I think it's just this is a normal thing in real estate for things to go from one extreme all the way to the other. They usually take time to arc from one to the other. We are just doing sort of a quick bam. We're going into this way.
0 to 60.
Yeah. So we'll figure it out. We're gonna figure it out. But so thank you, and I can't wait till we see you again.
Yeah, absolutely. Everybody get real.
Thank you.